I'll be sharing about mobile app privacy and systems and processing risks. Then talk about the mobile app ecosystem. How do you make money with regards to the mobile app? I've got 5 categories. So if you're doing targeted ads where you're working with advertising networks and you have ads in your mobile app, that's the first one. If you're selling your app and you have a freemium model, that's the second one. Some of you may have a subscription model where when they join your app, they pay you an annual service fee. Some of you are into development. You are creating the apps from your perspective. Now it seems that majority of you are into e-commerce services. In producing all these services, your purpose is to leverage, to monetize your mobile app, leveraging personal information, leveraging personal data. Our Data Privacy Act, they differentiate between a PIC and a PIP. The PICs, the Personal Information Controllers, and for you folks as the mobile app developer, we are now here in this ecosystem where there are many PICs that process personal data either jointly or on its own. For all of you as mobile app developers, you have to know that you are part of a larger ecosystem, and that means knowing what is in the software that you make available, because there are privacy implications. If you are a software developer, I would like you to think about the personal data that this scenario, this fictitious scenario that I've created with an IoT toy, what personal data does it create? You can see all the different personal data that is being collected. You have video, you have birth dates, you got voice, full name, email address, photos, voice signature, and so forth. So you have no problem understanding. This is what we call a data inventory. In the world of data protection, you would need to understand what data you collect, use, store, and disclose. Because in every data privacy, in every data protection law, there are rules that you will need to follow. Let's imagine data going to and fro from the IoT device and the mobile app, and as we execute the app, more personal data is processed. For you to comply with the data protection law, you will always want to know what is the purpose of your processing, because that is something you need to know before you can think about how the data privacy law kicks in. Because we have the targeted ads inside, you can see that the data is being analyzed in the cloud to produce what? Usage statistics, and you will need all the detailed profiles for targeted advertising. Many of you are using your mobile apps to collect or to process your e-commerce services. Think about your own application. I want to draw real life examples. Where do you think the risks are in your own mobile app? Real life cases of mobile apps that have gotten into trouble with data protection laws, both in the EU and in other countries. The US government fined TikTok 5.7 million. And take a look, for what? For collecting children's data. So for those of you who are offering games, for those of you who are offering tuition apps, let's see what happened here. What they did was they processed children's data, their names, the email, pictures, and locations from children under the age of 13. So if you take a look, for those of you who are the legal folks here, you will know that there's a COPPA and the Children's Online Protection Act. There are limits here, and they should get parental consent. And because they didn't do it, you can see the privacy issues. They collected sensitive personal information, and there was no parental consent for all of those below the age of 13. What happened was FTC gave or imposed a fine of $5.7 million. Question for all of you: can this happen? Do you have applications which involves children's data? because many of you will have your mobile apps not just in the Philippines, but in other countries that there are laws that you will need to take note of. If you look at the further areas, you will notice that in the EU, the Dutch DPA fined TikTok 750,000 euros for something we call transparency violations, which I think some of you by now would know that these same principles exist under the Philippines DPA. Because of one practice, you have the US going after the company, you have the Dutch authorities going after TikTok, all because of their privacy practices. It is not just legal compliance, it's about operational compliance. You will need to understand how your apps actually work. Then only you are able to look at the compliance requirements. They were hit with 20 million euros. That was the fine here, and they were hit with what is called lack of transparency. The regulators calculated that they needed 6 clicks of a button just to get to the web page that allows you to switch off the targeted ads. They got hit for lack of valid consent. As you hear from the DPA or from the GDPR perspective, there are strict definitions of consent. The application tap on the user's mobile app's microphone. So we're now talking about permissions. And while you get the app to watch your favorite football matches, they were trying to determine if the streams of soccer matches that you were watching were being pirated. And as you can see, because of that, they didn't tell you and they didn't allow the withdrawal of consent. So in this language, we are calling forced consent. La Liga was fined 250k euros for violating the GDPR. For the first time, the Chinese authorities, now you might have seen their cybersecurity law, and you may have seen that recently they introduced the PIPL, Personal Information Protection Law. They actually went after mobile apps as long as the purpose of the app is processing excessive data that is in proportion to the purpose. Guess what happened? They actually removed the apps from the App Store. For what? For violating user rights. So as a result, these apps were removed, and we all know once the app is removed, it's hard to acquire a new customer. This company that provides hailing is a hailing mobile app similar to Grab. It was removed from the App Store, China's WeChat and Alipay store, and as you can see, they not just removed one, they removed 25 mobile apps from all of the relevant web stores. And why was it removed? This is very sad. This announcement was made just 2 days after Didi went public, affecting share price. There was a pilot test of Grab Philippines. NPC suspended the pilot test. We need to be very careful, not just in the Philippines law, but in the European law, that the rights of the company cannot override the rights of the individual, or in this case, customers. The first case of a company getting into trouble with the PDPA in Singapore.
The complaint revealed that the personal data of 2,609 users of the app had been potentially compromised. The issue was exacerbated by the fact that the personal data involved included sensitive and health-related information. Actia was directed to pay a financial penalty of 6,000 Singapore dollars.
You've also seen that many developers make the mistake that when they talk about their privacy policy, they don't reference what the mobile app does. Now, I want to talk about more sophisticated processing where there's bias processing going on, or we call automated decision making. And the worst thing is the accuracy, and that the algorithmic results were not fair to them. They were fined 2.6 million euros because of the way they structured their algorithmic rating system. This case that had to do with the Indonesian contact tracing app, and what happened was 1.3 million people had their sensitive personal data and the associated COVID-19 results exposed in an open server. Indonesia is actually having a data protection law very soon. In Singapore, 80% of all enforcement cases is failure to secure data. The app, and this one got into trouble with the US, where it used facial recognition. This company is no longer in existence. On the internet, no matter which industry your app is from, there have always been security issues, leakage of data, unauthorized access to personal information, and so forth. So you can see that even how you store the data, whether you store it in the cloud or whichever area, or whichever network you are storing it down to the device itself, you need to take note of the potential issues in storing data. WhatsApp was fine because WhatsApp was sharing information with Facebook. So the question for all of you, when you process your mobile apps, is the data being shared with a parent company or with some other company with good intent, of course? And what happened was no one knew about it. They didn't know that this was actually happening. I'm sure you all know that the recent issue or controversy with the WhatsApp privacy notice probably drew a lot of attention to it, that the data was being shared with Facebook. And here, the fine, 25 million euros. I want to just point out to everyone that there has been research done. Even though the ad network providers say that they don't process personal data, that is not necessarily true. 7 out of 10 applications, they connect to at least one tracker. 15% of apps connect to 5 or more trackers. So if you are a developer, you should take note and watch your software development kit. 60% of all the connections to tracking sites, they are made to servers going out of the country. Potentially, if there are data protection laws, you are covered by those laws. I would like you to think about your own mobile apps, because in every single one of these stages, an organization has got into trouble.